यही है रास्ते सफर मेरे कारवां के लिए, यही है रास्ते सफर मेरे कारवां के लिए।
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear viewers. Having reached a point of no return in the confrontation between the Congress Party and Muslim League, the political climate of India was toxic and explosive. The drums of war were beating in Europe, which correspondingly also adversely affected the hostility amongst the Muslims and Hindus in India all over. In our today's segment, we shall discuss the following developments. Second World War, Jinnah's challenge to the British. Jinnah's categoric demands from the colonial powers. Jinnah's ceaseless campaign to awaken Muslims of India. The growing and ascendant consciousness amongst Muslims of India that they were a distinct nation. And you would recall that in the very first segment of this series, we had made a very lengthy presentation as to why Muslims always had been a nation within the large subcontinent that India is and was. And fifth part would be an Islamic state delineation of the contours which had been developing over a period of time through the efforts of some students in England, and these contours were based on Allama Iqbal's address that he made at Allahabad in 1930. Chaudhry Rahmat Ali, a student in England, the rationale and etymology of Pakistan that he had presented and had been accepted and became extremely popular amongst politicos as well as common Muslims. Coming first of all to Second World War, Jinnah's challenge to the British government. In the meantime, as things were heating up in the European quarter of the world, Europe began to reverberate with the rumblings of an actual war. Two dictators, Hitler and Mussolini, rode the European scene like titans, and the two brought into being in September 1936 the Rome-Berlin axis, which was to be the pivot around which revolved the politics of Europe. Suddenly on 15th March 1939, the Germans invaded Czechoslovakia and entered its capital Prague, and a month later Mussolini invaded Albania. Hitler's triumph in Czechoslovakia emboldened him to march his armies into Danzig and Poland. Soon the British entered the war against Rome-Berlin axis, and the Second World War of an unprecedented magnitude was on the heads of peoples all over the world. Declaration of war by Britain, constitutionally speaking, meant that India was also at war with the Axis powers. Within a few years of its inauguration, it was proved as to how inadequate the Government of India Act of 1935 had been in safeguarding the prestige and self-respect of India as a colony loyal to their British masters. The people of India should have been consulted prior to the declaration of war through their elected representatives in the Central Assembly. Towards the end of 1939, my dear viewers, negotiations started between the League and the Congress to arrive at a united stand on India's attitude to the war efforts. But nothing came out of them. And Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru wrote an epitaph on these talks. As the hurdles continue and others are added to them, I am compelled to think that the real difficulty is the difference in the political outlook and objectives. The Muslim League had condemned the federal part of the 1935 Act, and it had not been implemented with the introduction of the provincial part of the Act. The League continued to demand that it be scratched completely. On 11 September 1939, the Viceroy of India, Lord Lithgow, declared that the federal scheme would remain suspended during the pendency of the war. The Working Committee of the League, in its meeting soon after this announcement, expressed its appreciation of the government policy as enunciated by the Viceroy, but demanded that the federal scheme should be completely abandoned, that India's constitutional problem should be examined de novo. This resolution, drafted by the Quaid Azam, also demanded, and I quote his exact words, an assurance that no declaration regarding the question of constitutional advance for India should be made without the consent and approval of the All India Muslim League, nor should any constitution be framed and finally adopted by the Majesty's government and the British Parliament without such consent and approval. The Viceroy, my dear viewers, responded with a favorable assurance, and soon thereafter there followed a meeting between Quaid Azam and the Viceroy. The official communique covering these talks stated, His Excellency assured Mr. Jinnah that His Majesty's government were fully alive to the necessity for safeguarding the legitimate interests of all minorities, and that he need be under no apprehension that the importance of these subjects will be lost sight of. Jinnah considered this statement to be inadequate and halting, and on 23rd February 1940 he wrote to the Viceroy, I regret to say this does not meet the point raised by the Muslim League, because it still leaves the position of 90 millions in India only in the region of consultation and counsel, and vests final decision in the hands of Great Britain to determine the fate and future of British India. We regret we cannot accept this position. No commitment should be made with regard to the future constitution of India or any interim settlement with any other party without our approval or consent. Jinnah's categoric demands. The Quaid followed this up by sending in writing to the Viceroy on 1st July the points that he had raised. So Jinnah's categoric demands were as follows. Number one, no statement should be made by the government which would in any way militate against the basic principles of the Lahore resolution regarding creation of Muslim states in the northwestern and eastern zones. The government will not implement any interim or final scheme without the prior approval and consent of the Muslim League. Number three, war efforts can only be strengthened if the government associated Muslim leadership as equal partners in the central and provincial governments. During the pendency of the war, the Executive Council of the Viceroy should be enlarged so that Muslim representation is equal to that of the Hindus. If Congress agrees to come in, otherwise Muslims should have a majority. A war council be appointed of not less than 15 members with the Viceroy as president. Muslims to have equal seats, that is 7, as also the Hindus. If the Congress comes in, otherwise they should have a majority. All Muslim representatives to be chosen only by the Muslim League as the sole representative organization of the Muslims of India. On 6 July 1940, the Viceroy issued a statement which amounted to a rejection of the demands made by the Muslim League. He promised, however, on behalf of His Majesty's government, that at the conclusion of the war, a body representative of the principal elements in India's national life would be appointed to draw up the framework of a new constitution. This was followed by a detailed explanation of British government's stand on the League demands, when Amory made a comprehensive summary in the House of Commons on the Indian situation and on the Jinnah Viceroy talks. Further negotiations followed between Jinnah and the Viceroy, but did not take matters far. On 29 September 1940, the Quaid, in a meeting of the All India Muslim League, explained that the British government had no intention to part with power, that they were callous to the demands of the Muslim nation of 19 million. He warned the Congress and the British that henceforth Muslims were to be treated as a separate nation. Coming now, my dear viewers, to the ceaseless campaign of Jinnah, which was meant to awaken the Muslims of India. The Lucknow session had authorized the President of the League, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, to take all necessary steps to form a Muslim League party in the central legislature at an early date with power, to coalesce with any other party or group whose policy is approximately the same as that of the All India Muslim League. In the provincial sphere also, the President was authorized to bring into being Muslim League parties in provincial legislatures. Jinnah's ceaseless and determined efforts aimed at consolidation of Muslim League across India bore a lot of fruit. A little later, reviewing the work entrusted to him in this field, he said in his presidential address, Calcutta, there are Muslim League parties functioning inside 7 out of 11 provincial legislatures. A large majority of Muslim members in all these 7 assemblies belong to the Muslim League parties, and the membership of these parties is increasing every day. The Muslim League contested with great success a number of by-elections to the legislative assemblies in various provinces. Quaid Azam utilized his presence in Karachi, which he visited in October 1938, to preside over the Sindh Provincial Conference of the Muslim League in order to consolidate the Muslim MLAs into one united Muslim League party, so that at least in one province there could be a full-fledged Muslim League ministry. When the League met in its annual session at Patna, it adopted resolutions on the deaths of Allama Iqbal, as also of Maulana Shaukat Ali and Kamal Ataturk. Speaking on the resolution and paying tribute to Iqbal, Jinnah said, his death is an irreparable loss to the Muslim India. He was a personal friend of mine and composer of the finest poetry in the world. He will live as long as Islam will live. His noble poetry interprets the true aspirations of Muslims. It will remain an inspiration for us and for generations after us. I say the Muslims and the Muslim League have only one ally, and that ally is the Muslim nation. Muslims are face to face with a life and death struggle. It is a great pleasure for me to see that a great awakening has taken place among the Muslims. If you harness your energies and mobilize your forces like a disciplined army, victory will be yours. 90 million Muslims could be a powerful force if they stood united. He believed in their destiny, and he believed it was his destiny to lead them to their ultimate goal. And to that end, he began to work with renewed vigor and faith, with that single-mindedness of purpose that distinguishes the man with a mission from others. Ascendant consciousness, Muslims are distinct as a nation. Much earlier than many Muslim leaders, Lord Morley, Secretary of State for India between 1905 and 1910, as far back as that, a scholar of high eminence who had made a thorough study of the communal tangle in India, was irresistibly drawn to the conclusion that there was hardly anything in common between Hindus and Muslims, and it was the political unity imposed by the British that alone held them together. On one occasion he said, "Let us not forget that the difference between Mohammedanism and Hinduism is not a mere difference of articles of religious faith and dogma. It is a difference of life, in tradition, in history, in all the social things, as well as articles of belief that constitute a community. What makes it interesting and even exciting? Do not let us forget that in talking of Hindus and Mohammedans, we are dealing with and are brought face to face with vast historic issues. We are dealing with the very mightiest forces that through all the centuries and ages have molded the fortunes of great states and the destinies of countless millions of mankind. Let us now, my dear viewers, come to the delineation of tours for an Islamic state which many scholars within India and abroad were working hard towards etching out a concrete image of what an Islamic state should be and would be like. In one of his speeches at the Round Table Conference, Iqbal declared, if the British were to quit India, making way for a majority form of government, then they would be leaving that country to the tender mercies of a bloody civil war. If such an eventuality was to be avoided, then the establishment of a Muslim homeland was inevitable. The concept of a Muslim nation in the mind of Iqbal is clearly glimpsed in his presidential address of 1930 at Allahabad. He said, and I quote, "The religious ideal of Islam, therefore, is organically related to the social order which it has created. The rejection of the one will eventually involve the rejection of the other. Therefore, the construction of a polity on national lines, if it means a displacement of the Islamic principle of solidarity, is simply unthinkable to a Muslim. The unity of an Indian nation, therefore, must be sought, not in the negation, but in the mutual harmony and cooperation of the many. And it is on the discovery of unity in this direction that the fate of India as well as Asia really depends." He continued, "I have no hesitation in declaring that if the principle that the Indian Muslim is entitled to full and free development on the lines of his own culture and tradition in his own homeland is recognized as the basis of a permanent communal settlement, he will be ready to stake his all for the freedom of India." The units of Indian society are not territorial as the European countries. The principle of European democracy cannot be applied to India without recognizing the fact of communal groups. The Muslim demand for the creation of a Muslim India within India is therefore perfectly justified. I would like to see the Punjab Northwest Frontier Province, Sindh and Balochistan amalgamated into a single state, thus possessing full opportunity of development within the body politic of India. The Northwest Indian Muslims will prove the best defenders of India against a foreign invasion, be that invasion of ideas or of bayonets. To my mind, a unitary form of government is simply unthinkable in self-governing India. What are called residuary powers must be left entirely to self-governing states. The central federal state exercising only those powers which are expressly vested in it by the free consent of federal states. My dear viewers, let us now come to Chaudhry Rahmat Ali, the icon who lived in England as a student and thought of what should be done in India to resolve not only the communal problem, but to attain the ultimate glory of Islam in the subcontinent. At the time the roundtable conferences were being held in London, there studied a young Muslim student at Cambridge. His name was Chaudhry Rahmat Ali. His mind was obsessed with the political future of Indian Muslims, and he appeared to have devoted much of his time and work to this problem. He naturally met Muslim leaders that came to represent their community at the roundtable conferences, the poet-philosopher Iqbal being an important personality among those that he met in company with his fellow students. Chaudhry Rahmat Ali is generally credited with having coined the word Pakistan. However, there are some that hold the view that it is Iqbal who should be given credit for it, as he was the first to suggest it. Let us examine the matter further and see the etymology of the word Pakistan, which is the name of our state that is so dear to all of us. The research revealed that Pakistan had been first used in 1933 by Chaudhry Rahmat Ali in a pamphlet titled Now or Never, subtitled Are We to Live or Perish Forever? A note appeared on the etymology of Pakistan in the April 1960 issue of Notes and Queries, London, saying that the term Pakistan began its life as a cluster of initials artificially compounded to form a euphonious name. The term Pakistan was apparently coined by Chaudhry Rahmat Ali at some time before 1933 and is said by him to have been published in a cyclo-style pamphlet titled Now or Never, which he issued to his supporters in January 1933. Chaudhry Rahmat Ali's rationale. In this pamphlet, Chaudhry Rahmat Ali and his friends advocated Pakistan in no ambiguous terms. India, constituted as it is at the present moment, is not the name of one single country, nor the home of one single nation. It is in fact the designation of a state created by the British for the first time in history. It includes peoples who have never previously formed part of the Indian nation at any period of its history, but who have, on the contrary, from the dawn of history till the advent of the British, possessed and retained distinct nationalities of their own. One of such peoples is our own nation. The pamphlet continues, these are facts, hard facts, and historic realities which we challenge anybody to contradict. It is on the basis of such facts and realities that we assert without fear of contradiction that we, the Muslims of Pakistan, do possess a distinct nationality from that of the Hindus of India, who constitute the Hindu nation and live and have every right to live in most of India, and that we deserve and demand the recognition of our national status by the grant to Pakistan of a federal constitution separate from that of the rest of India. An unequivocal demand was for Pakistan having its own federal constitution. It concluded with the words, "Let us make no mistake about it. The issue is now or never. Either we live or perish forever. The future is ours if we live up to our faith. It does not lie in the lap of the gods. It rests in our own hands. We alone can make or mar it. The history of last century is full of open warnings to us, and they are as plain as were ever given to any nation. Shall it be said of us that we ignored all those warnings, betrayed our ancient nationhood into the Indian Federation, and let our Islamic heritage perish throughout the subcontinent of India. In his book, published in 1940, Pakistan, the Fatherland of the Pak Nation, Chaudhry Rahmat Ali writes, "It was in this declaration, now and never, dated 1933, that I first used for our Indian homelands the name Pakistan, which I had invented for our combined Indian and Asia homeland. So much for the invention of the name Pakistan. Now, a word about its composition. Pakistan is both a Persian and an Urdu word. It is composed of letters taken from the names of all our homelands, Indian and Asian. That is Punjab, Afghania, Northwest Frontier Province, Kashmir, Iran, Sindh, including Kutch and Kathiawar, Turkestan, Afghanistan and Balochistan. It means the land of the Paks, the spiritually pure and clean." Dear viewers, with this illuminating expose of the etymology and rationale of our dear Pakistan, not only as a name but as a country, I come to the end of today's presentation. Hope you enjoyed it and you would join us for our next segment. Thank you very much.